Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to South Australia, all those South Australians and anybody else that's tuning in from wherever. And welcome to the Cafe Locked Out audience as well. And as you will see, I didn't play the normal intro I do when I have Bruce Pay on a Monday. But unfortunately, Bruce is not able to be with us today, so I put something else in place, and we'll have another guest a guest on here today. But just to let you know, if you do like what you're seeing and you want to follow along, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button to follow along, and we'll go from there. But just quickly, just wanted to share this. One of the reasons that our dear friend Dr. Bruce Pay is not with us today is he's actually been called to action here back in South Australia. So there's a bit of a SA Country Fire Service update in regards to the Deep Creek fires, and it does say that officially declared to be contained as of late yesterday. However, personnel from all over Australia continue to work on this fire. So, and our dear friend Bruce Pay, who is our regular Monday night feature at 4:30, is obviously put his hand up to do that, and who's not surprised that Bruce would be doing that? So he still continues to give of himself to for the benefit of the country and others. So good on you, Bruce. So pray for all those people working really hard to combat the fires. And I just want to say, a big shout out to all the volunteer firefighters from all around the country for your continued service to wherever it's required. It's a dangerous job, it's a tough job, and I'm really, really grateful for the fact that you guys are putting yourself forward to be able to do that on behalf of your communities. So well done. That's where Bruce Pay is. So I've got a few comments coming in, and as usual, we're streaming onto YouTube, onto Rumble, onto my Rumble, and the Cafe Locked Out Rumble channel. So apologies that I didn't give better notice in regards to Bruce not being here. He did mention it to me at the beginning of the weekend, but I did decide to fill the slot with someone else, and who I'm going to introduce to you now. So today's guest is Rebecca Hewett. She's a Legislative Council candidate for One Nation here in South Australia. Going to catch up have a bit of a yarn with her, and it's quite topical. Obviously, we're coming up to election time here in South Australia. And just a little bit about Rebecca. She's a wife, a mother, a farmer, a woman of faith, and a strong political advocate for South Australia. Having done almost 2 terms on local councils in Barunga West and Mount Barker, she has the passion and drive to push for much needed change in her state. Rebecca stood for One Nation in the federal seat of Mayo in the last federal election in May 2025, and is now standing as an upper house candidate for One Nation in the upcoming state election on 21st of March 2026. She's passionate about helping people, hates injustice, and is determined to advocate strongly for the people of this state. So going to bring Rebecca onto the stage now. So hopefully we can get you. Probably just need your picture on there, Beck, if you can hear me.
Oh, yes, I can hear you.
Turned your picture off, but that's all right. Better when people can see you.
I haven't turned my picture off. This is sorry.
We had it. That's all right. We can hear you there. People can hear you though.
I'll just stop it and.
Well, you got jumped off and jumped back on. So yeah, Pickle Mix, good on you. Much love and strength for Dr. Bruce. We'll just wait for Beck to come back in. As again, looks like there's a bit of issues there. So I'll wait for her to come back in. And yep. So you've got a few people coming in. Anyway, I'll just share a quick clip from One Nation, another One Nation Legislative Council candidate as well, which is a bit of a message from Carlos Coimbra. I'm going to play that for you a second now too.
We've made our principal positions very clear to everybody. And I think what's changing now is the Australian public. They're waking up. They're understanding that things need to change, and One Nation is that vehicle. So while some may think it's a protest vote, I think it's actually the Australian people saying they've had a gutful of what's been dished up by these 2 parties, and now they're looking for change, and we're going to provide that change. We've made our
you go. That's one of your running mates there, Rebecca.
Yeah,
So
Carlos.
welcome to the stage after that little intro.
Hi,
So
Mark,
just
and
thought I'd
thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no worries at all. A little bit of technical stuff thing, and things are a little bit all over the place, seeing that we're throwing things together.
Yes.
But that's all right, and people will see as a different background. Obviously, usually I have my Wake Up Australia with Bruce, and I thought I'd change it. I didn't want to play the normal intro that I do play for Bruce because that belongs to him. So I've gone back to this other one. But that was your running mate, Carlos, and you and I have caught up before because we covered quite a bit in regards to your situation with council. So there was a lot going on
Yes.
there. We spoke at the federal election when you were running for Mayo, because that's my seat here in my electorate as well. So good to have you come back to have a bit of a yarn about things that are happening in political world, and you now running for the Legislative Council here in SA. So great to have you on board again.
Yes, thank you, Mark. I love being on your show, and you've got a great following of people. So really appreciate coming back on for a chat.
No, that's all good. And we're going to have a yarn about a few things. Just obviously, one of the first quick ones I want to ask you is why continue with One Nation? What's attracting you to One Nation as a candidate and a political party that you want to continue to run for?
That's a good question, and I get asked that a lot. The fact of the matter is that One Nation, Pauline Hanson, is incredible. And over the last 30 years, she has not changed. She has been consistent. She has had the same message the whole way through. Pauline has so many runs on the board. 3 decades is a long time to be in the political realm. One Nation is the only party who is fighting for Australians and for Australia. There is no other party. And I think the public are starting to realise that what Pauline has said all along is correct, and they're jumping on board. Pauline's message hasn't changed. The people are waking up. And as you can see by the polls, people are putting all their hope in One Nation because we are the only party that can make a real change.
Yeah, and I know your character. As I said, we've spoken plenty of times. You're a Christian woman. You have conservative values. How do you go with the label? Because you hear a lot of commentators, the media, other politicians, labeling One Nation Party as very far right. Do you think that label fits, or is it just over-categorized?
Look, the legacy media, the mainstream media, they are terrified of us. And so what they do is they mislabel us, they throw out lies about us in order to discredit us. And, people out there still trust the news, they still listen to the ABC, and they believe this stuff. Every time somebody meets Pauline Hanson, they change their mind about her. She is the nicest person you'll ever meet. We are centre-right. We are what the Menzies government was, when it started all those years ago. We are the Conservative Party. So I don't consider us far right at all. If being far right means, not putting Australians in Australia first, well, okay, maybe we are, but nothing's radical. We're just trying to fix the cost of living, provide roofs over people's heads, just make the country prosper again. Like at the moment, Labor and Liberal, the Uni Party are doing a managed decline, which is just making life harder and harder and harder. And they just don't want One Nation being a threat. They just want to be Labor Liberal, Labor Liberal, Labor Liberal. They do not want One Nation taking their numbers and taking their spot. They're scared to death of us.
Yeah, and a lot of commentators are saying that, and a lot of people. There's also commentators hinting towards the idea that One Nation is a one policy party. I'm going to refer to a little clip that a fellow One Nation candidate, but not in the Legislative Council, but one of the candidates in one of your seats, Rocco DeAngelis, shared this little clip on his, and I'm just going to play this quickly because it'll lead me into something. I'm just going to play this quickly.
Would you be happy sitting in a coalition government with One Nation and Pauline Hanson? Chris, I'd be happy accepting supply from across the crossbench. There are a number of crossbench members who I think would guarantee supply for a strong coalition government.
Would you be happy to be in coalition?
I don't think she.
Hang on. She was asked directly whether
sitting around a cabinet table.
She was asked directly whether she would join a coalition government with the Liberals and the Nationals, and she said certainly. That means one nation ministers in your government. Would you be happy with that?
At this point, no, I would not, because they're a single-issue party. I have no idea how they would vote in relation to important things like taxes, in relation to corporation law, in relation to
They're not a single-issue party. They're focused on immigration. They're focused on net zero and cheaper energy and multiculturalism.
Yeah.
A lot on immigration. Would you be happy? Would you be happy sitting in?
So this is how they frame it. Like they say, you're the party of immigration, and I did have a comment coming in there from Richford. Sort of that's why I kind of naturally, because he said in layman's terms, how can one nation better Australia? But the reason I prompted up that that little clip there is she pointed at the fact that you guys are a one issue party. But I did want to just and someone else commented that. You've got one of the most extensive policies. Someone else is like, out of all the parties, your policies go into a lot of detail. I'm just going to bring this, see if I can bring that up again and see if I can share that. Let's see, that's the preferencing, One Nation policies, share this one. There we go, a bit clunky. So now this is this is a One Nation policy page, right? So we're going to touch into a couple of them that are going to be that you're passionate about in South Australia. I mean, this is obviously the national policy platform, but you know, so we're just going to premise this back to what she was saying, or a one issue party. I mean, these are all the policies that you have. You know, you got family tax policy / government waste, free speech policy, a water policy, Australian jobs and infrastructure, new housing policy, cost of living measures, citizen initiated referenda talks about that, and I talk about that with Australians for Better Government being on the board there, climate, family law and child support, farming, foreign ownership, education, immigration, medical cannabis, stop the rorts, multinational taxation, firearms ownership, health, COVID-19 policy, pro-life, fisheries, forestry, net zero, destroying Australia, the real impacts. I mean, there's so many policies here. It's just, and I had to laugh when I've seen that, when I've seen Rocco share that. What's your thoughts on people labeling One Nation as a single issue party, and they say it's all about immigration? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, Mark, I think the public are not eating that up anymore. They've been throwing that line out for so many years, and the public are waking up and they know that we are a party now of substance. We are the only true opposition party now. We are no longer a minor party. We are a major party with the numbers that we're polling. And we have excellent policies. We have sensible policies. We have policies that are going to help everyday Australians, and we can fully fund them. So, nobody's buying that anymore. They need to find another tune, because that tune just isn't playing anymore.
Yeah. And you were, and just wanted to, I guess, this is another big thing that's come up. You were obviously number 2 on the ticket. Carlos was number 1, but that's now changed slightly. So what's brought that about? I think a lot of people already know, but what's happened? So a big thing here in South Australia with the Legislative Council.
This is absolutely huge. This is the best thing that could have happened for One Nation. Our polls are growing and growing, and it is bringing across some real superstars. So in Queensland, Barnaby Joyce came across, as you know, but we've just recruited a massive fish, Corey Bernardi. He is amazing. We are so thrilled to have him on board. He's such a polished politician, and that is something, you see, One Nation, the candidates like Carlos and I, Carlos is a builder, I'm a farmer. What Corey brings is that experience, and we need that. He's going to teach us, we're going to learn from him, and he is the new leader of One Nation South Australia. He is now number 1 on the ticket for the upper house, and Carlos and I are thrilled. We're expecting that the polls are going to actually go up by up to another 10%. It is incredible. Corey has been out of politics for 6 years. He lives regionally. He has regional businesses, and he sees the suffering that is happening in the regions. He's not coming back for any other reason than he wants to help, and he wants to make life better for regional South Australia. And we are so excited to have him.
Yeah, no, big thing, and if it increases the polls by the numbers you're saying, that's going to open up some more legislative council spots, plus a lot of coverage across the lower house seats and that as well. So I'm assuming then that Corey comes into the #1 spot there on the legislative council ticket. Carlos jumps down to #2, and you're #3, and we'll talk about polling and numbers as we go a little bit further.
Well, Mark, we're so confident. We are so confident with our numbers that we have 4 upper house candidates, and we've actually got a 5th one picked, because we think we'll watch the numbers, of course, because the South Australian polling hasn't come out yet. You've got to be aware that the polling that we're seeing at the moment is all federal polling. So we're polling extremely high in the regions, but we may put up a 5th upper house candidate yet. And also we have filled all 47 lower house seats. Last election, 4 years ago, we only had 12 seats filled. We've got 47 lower house seats. It's incredible. I'm not sure how many the Liberals have, but I know they haven't got 47.
Yes, that's a big cool. Well, I mean, they're imploding, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit more as well. And I mean, and the message is obviously what I'm saying to people is don't so much focus on Liberal, because don't waste your time, because they're imploding themselves. The focus is, and the fight should be, against Labor, and that's where the fight should be, and that's what I've been advocating for. I personally do not want another term of the majority of Labor majority. Now, unfortunately, I do believe Labor is obviously going to, they're too strong. They're going to end up forming government again. The main focus is avoiding the supermajority, for them to be able to nilly-willy bring across any sort of legislation and push it through, rush it through the lower house and the legislative council. But
no,
just
I
going
don't know
back,
if you're aware, we only need to get 4. We only need to get 4 lower house candidates elected, and we can actually have a very big say. So I understand that Labor will probably win government, but if we get 4 lower house seats and a couple in the upper house, we actually can start to have an impact.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And going back to the Corey coming on board, I wanted to say, because I know I've spoken to Carlos, and he has indicated to me that he's doing it for the future of the country and the people of Australia. Now, he always said that if someone better comes along, he'd actually step back. And it's ultimately, so people are saying, oh, that's a bit rude. Carlos and Rebecca have been punted down the page, but I'm fully aware, I think, from you and Carlos, that you're actually okay with that, because it's you want a solid team going into the selection, and it sounds like Corey Bernardi jumping on board is actually going to enable you to do that.
Unlike the legacy parties who are constantly fighting, constantly changing leaders and all the rest, One Nation, we are a team, we are a family, and we are so tight. I don't know a single person in One Nation South Australia that is in this for themselves. We are team players. All we want to do is to see a better South Australia for our children and for our grandchildren. That is so beautiful about One Nation.
Yeah, no, good call. So there's quite a lot of policies, obviously, that I just ran through earlier. There's just so much to go through. I guess I just wanted to, focus for now about some of the things that because I've seen some of your posts. You are openly calling out the energy issue that we have in Australia now. One Nation has been at the forefront of calling out the net zero agenda and this renewable push. They're one of the only parties that is pushing back on a lot of international global think tanks that have this groupthink that have pushed this all onto our nation, and our parties have adopted it. And Liberal were dragged kicking and screaming to reverse course on that, whereas the stance by One Nation has been clear all along that this is the wrong way to go, this renewables push and the net zero. So tell us a little bit about some of your experiences in regards to what you're seeing, your personal experience in regards to energy in South Australia.
Okay, so as you may know, we're 7th generation wheat farmers from Butte on the top of the York Peninsula. we've had, every time the wind blows, the power goes out. It's absolutely crazy. In the last 12 months, our power has gone out 19 times. This year alone, it has gone out 6 times. Today, the power is out, and SA Water has notified us that our water is off as well. I don't want to compare us to a third world country, because that would be awful. But we're not a third world country. We're very, very lucky here. But surely we can have reliable power and reliable water, because where we are on the Yorke Peninsula is that when the power goes out, we don't have water. Like, we don't have dams, we don't have underground water. We've only got rainwater tanks. And to get water to the house, and to flush the toilet, literally you need to have electricity to do that. Most farms these days do have diesel backup, which will get you through for a day or two. But I just remember maybe a year or two ago, like, the power's going off for 4 or 5 days. And that's quite incredible. I did look into the South Australian Power Network's website, and they have mentioned that they have changed the insulators. So what were originally ceramic insulators, they've now changed over to plastic, polymer ones. They're cheaper, they're lighter, they're easier to install. And they reckon that they stay cleaner. They reckon that they're better. I'm just questioning that. If they're better, how come we're having more blackouts? Because these flashovers are occurring due to air pollution. So basically they're saying it's the dust and it's the salt. We get both of them in spades on the Yorke Peninsula. But I just question the insulators. Why are we still getting so many blackouts? I'm questioning the number of renewables. Well, they're actually unrenewable unrenewables. It's just not working. And it's pretty scary, the fact that the only coal-fired power that we get is from over the border. We've got no self-reliance for power at all. And that is one of One Nation's policies, is to build a clean, green coal-fired plant in Port Augusta. We're pro coal, we're pro-gas. If the ban on talking about nuclear is lifted, we're also happy to talk about nuclear. But at the same time, we're not anti-wind, solar or hydro. We just believe that you have to allow multiple things to be part of the mix. What we want to see, though, is we want to see the subsidies removed. Take away all the subsidies. If something is reliable and it's cost effective, it should stand on its own 2 feet. It should not need a subsidy. Let's let the free market decide what we're going to use. So we're not anti anything. We are pro having everything on the board and letting the market decide what is the cheapest and what is the most reliable power for this state.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. And the thing is that you see a lot of other countries around the world adopting small nuclear reactors. Nuclear, they're looking at, they've still got coal. Here in South Australia, they left nothing available to us because they blew up our coal-fired power station, and now relying on interconnectors and all that. It is absolutely crazy. So while the rest of the world is moving forward with a sustainable mix of power generation, we've blown it up and relied totally on.
Wasn't that Tom Cousins' bonus? I mean, every other state has mothballed their coal-fired plants. They've just mothballed them. Didn't Tom Cousins? Was it Tom? He just blew it up.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just crazy that they wouldn't have just like put it to sleep for a while, just put it into mothballs and then have something to fall back on. But they actually left us nothing, and we're paying the highest power prices in the nation here in South Australia. Plus, we seem to have a lot of interruptions and relying on other states. So this whole idea that you would not look at having a good mix of energy, a varied mix of energy, and I agree with the letting the free market decide. But if we're talking about subsidies, then a lot of people would say, well, let's get rid of the subsidies for coal and gas and all that. It should be across the board. But remembering we should also maybe charge a bit more for the resources that we actually have in this country. So there's some other countries that are doing that quite well with their resources and having sovereign wealth funds, because they've got that set up properly. Here in Australia, we haven't done that. We've followed internationalist kind of pressure, and you've got the likes of even one of the biggest climate change zealots, Bill Gates, reversing his spin on that it is actually not as catastrophic as what we thought. So,
do you know why that is? Do you know why that is?
Yeah, go.
Before, the renewables was just such a big industry, and it was being pushed globally. There is another industry that's going to be even bigger. Do you know what that is?
Probably data
It's
centers, I
AI.
reckon.
No, it's AI, artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And guess what AI needs in order for it to work efficiently? It needs reliable power. It needs reliable power. So there is no way that we can have an AI revolution through renewables. And so I think that's why Bill Gates has backed away. And I actually think that the elites and the globalists are actually going to start switching back to your coal, gas, and nuclear in order to power their new AI.
Yeah, you're seeing that shift, and there's a lot of talk on that because it relies on a lot of power.
It does.
Absolutely. Yet our current premier and the Labor Party are dead set on net zero 2027, whatever that even means as well, and continuing down this path. So, and I think South Australians just need to know it's going to cost them a lot, and it's going to cost them energy infrastructure, and yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens. And you guys are obviously clearly pushing back on that hard, and obviously being challenged at every point for that, because every media and everybody else seems to label anybody like One Nation that's pushing back on a lot of the narrative from the major parties as conspiratorial, as nutbags, as whatever. But the chickens are coming home to roost with all the information that's coming out.
Is One Nation actually care about the everyday battler? Because these guys, they just want a roof over their head. They don't care if they've got solar panels or not. People need a roof over their head before they can even think of solar panels. Kids, like the population growth of this country is dropping because they can't have kids until they can afford a roof over their head. And sorry, I just want to touch that we're also going to be banning wind factories and solar factories on prime agricultural land. Like, we're going to be, we support having solar panels on your roof. That is fine, just to get your electricity bill down. But we're not going to allow paddocks upon paddocks upon paddocks of solar panels. That is just environmental vandalism. It is disgusting. It is an environmental hazard, and that will be banned with One Nation.
Yeah, no, good call, because I guess this is the thing about renewable, anything that's destructive to farmland, and that it needs to be addressed. I mean, farmers are the backbone of our country, right? And they've found at every route they've looked to try and screw the farmer and agriculture in this country, and it's really worrying. So it's good to see that people are standing up for that. So getting onto that, I know that I was following Flag Australia for a while. They were talking a lot about water on properties. Now, you being a farming family and using dams and all that sort of stuff, it just never really made sense to me that people, you'd be restricted from having like a dam and dam capacity and having runoff into your country, and that into your dams on your land, and then obviously not having access to that, or even being charged or taxed more on that. Is there some changes in the wind that One Nation's looking at, or that you're even considering, sort of obviously coming from a farming background, about this whole water rights issue?
I am so glad you asked that question. So One Nation is very supportive of all primary agriculture, whether it is the vineyards, the fruit growers, the dairy industry, the agricultural industry. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that specifically here in the Adelaide Hills, we ran out of water last year. So people were getting water trucked in. In towns, some of the towns like ours in the Adelaide Hills, there is no mains water. So basically is what you catch in your tank or catch in your dam. At the moment, dams are not allowed to be larger than 2 megalitres. In fact, the Landscape Board has they banned any new dams, and they banned the making them bigger, expanding them. What One Nation is proposing is we're going to allow farmers to make their dams 4 megalitres. So we're going to allow them to double their capacity. It's really important that we can catch water, but people are saying, well, why not make it unlimited? Why not just go hard or go home? The fact of the matter is that we are in the Mount Barker catchment area, and we do not want to take away all environmental flow, because One Nation understands there has to be a balance between farming and the environment. We're not anti the environment. We want to protect and look after the environment. It's important. But I think that we can find a really nice balance there where farmers are looked after and the environment are also looked after. So we'll be overturning that ban. The other thing that we're going to be overturning is through the through the Mount Barker district and the Fleurieu, they were spending a small fortune on putting in these slow bypass meters on dams. So basically what that meant was that it would just allow slow leakage of water into the environment. Now, I don't know who thought up this crazy idea. Obviously, they're not a farmer, because every farmer knows every dam leaks. They all leak. And there's already environmental flows happening. The other thing about the dams is that the dams also provide water for the bird life, for the kangaroos, for the wombats, like just for the wildlife. So dams help the wildlife and the environment as well. So it's not evil to have a dam.
Yeah, it's almost like a, it's just a way of going too far the other way, trying to obviously get more money out of it, but also, also this being really restrictive. So it just is, it sounds like a common sense balance. And I like what you said there. It is about, because most people, even myself, that pushes back on the whole renewables, the push and all that. Most of us acknowledge that we should be good stewards of the environment, right? So, but it's finding that balance and not cutting your nose off to spite your face, which is what I guess One Nation's looking at doing in that regard. So, look, it's massively important.
I didn't mention the irrigators. If you're an irrigator, please head to the One Nation website and have a look at our water policy, because we're also looking after the irrigators.
Yeah, awesome. So it's really just people jumping onto the. So what is the best way for people to reach out? Obviously to SA One Nation, because I know that there is the main site. Yeah, so it's One Nation SA is the actual website, because this is the main One Nation one, but the other website is One Nation SA is a separate site altogether.
Yep, One Nation South Australia, One Nation SA, you will get it.
Yeah, no worries. That's fine. So what other so what's the other thing that's passionate, that you're particularly passionate about here in South Australia? I mean, obviously you just talked about, water for farmers. We talked about renewables. What's one of the other things that it's really hot on?
We're winding back the race-based special privileges. I don't know if you recall, but we had a voice of the Parliament put to the Australian people a couple of years ago, and South Australia voted very highly against having a race-based voice to the Parliament. Anyway, Labor ignored the South Australian people and they implemented it anyway. At the election on the 21st of March is also the election for the SA voice to the Parliament, is costing the taxpayer $30 million to hold this election. Last time they only had 6 people apply for the position. So they have set up a voice which even the Aboriginal people don't support. It is just such a waste of money, and it is a slap in the face to the South Australian people. So that is something that One Nation is going to be repealing in their first 100 days. We believe that assistance should be based on need, not on race. We are here, whether you've been here 1 minute or a million years, we are here to help the people that need help. It shouldn't have anything to do with where you come from, how long you've been here, or whether you're Aboriginal, whether you're Greek, Italian, Australian. Like, it doesn't matter. It should be based on need. It's only fair.
Yeah. I think that's fair, and most people would acknowledge that it should be based on need and not in race. And people that have been watching my channel and following my conversations know that I feel quite strongly about the South Australian Labor government pursuing that, considering that 65% of South Australians voted no in the national voice to Parliament. And we're talking now, we've seen what's happened in Victoria. We're now seeing the same conversations happening in Australia, in South Australia. We're talking voice, treaty, truth, reparations. These are all the things that come as part of that, and this is that separate industry or separate class now. And there's a lot more money going to it. And you mentioned the 30 million, additional 30 million. It should be one election for for every Australian, not having multiple elections and multiple costs to the taxpayer, because ultimately it's for taxpayers.
The people are so over this, the disconnect and the disrespect, and like that they take us for mugs. They don't listen to us at all. It's just absolutely crazy. Just wanted to touch on actually, I'll wait till you finish, but I want to touch on housing as well. But just, they're out of touch and they're not listening. One Nation are out there listening to the people and advocating for what the people want, not pushing their own agenda. Yeah.
No, you're right, and I think a lot of people are on the nose with this. And as popular as Labor was when they got elected here in South Australia back in 2022, I feel that there's been a bit of a shift in people seeing the way they're, especially even pushing through this voice, but lots of other things. You know, they made all these grand claims about fixing ramping, health system's an absolute mess. Now they're talking about spending millions of dollars. So it's all rhetoric. So they say a lot of things before an election, and then it's business as usual. And meanwhile, you know, the state debt keeps skyrocketing, and now they're coming out promising millions of dollars more projects. Which any party that's in power can do this because they're using taxpayer money, right? So you can, but when you're in power, the media follows you. You can say whatever you want. You're going to say we're going to spend $50 million here in this election to make these people happy by putting this in place. And obviously, as an incumbent government, it's always looking nice and pretty. But following through on those promises is another thing, you know. And sometimes you don't see the realisation for maybe 6 years, right?
I think the South Australian people for sure are absolutely sick of this pork barrelling. Like, we are waking up to this. Like, there's this whole thing about coming into town and being Father Christmas is crazy. When you are adding, like, they're adding constantly. We're nearly at $1 trillion of debt. Okay, this has to stop. Nobody is talking about how they're going to pay down the debt. One Nation is going to be fiscally responsible. We are going to do responsible spending, and we are going to make sure that we are spending less than the other government parties. Like Labor and Liberal, they're addicted to spending. They're absolutely addicted to it. And it just, when is it going to stop, Mark? It's crazy.
Other people's money. They got used to spending
other people's money. Yeah.
That's right. I know that you were going to start talking about housing, so we can go into that next if you like, because, you know,
okay,
you are the one policy party, right?
I've got so much to say. Like, you actually touched on the health. So can we just, like, we're going to fix ramping because basically the demand is too high and the supply is too low. We have emergency beds being taken up by non-emergency patients because our health system is broken. The place for the non-emergency people, like whether they're aged care or mental health, there is nowhere for them to go. So they're taking up emergency beds. This is what's causing the ramping. Also, obviously, bringing in so many people, like that is also taking up beds as well. I just want to touch on quickly also, we're going to improve regional, remote and rural healthcare. We're going to be handing the decision-making and the budgets back to the regional health authorities, decentralising health services back to hospital boards because they know the unique needs of their area. And so it's really critical that they have a sufficient degree of autonomy. Like the country regional services know what they need. So the decentralisation of this is just so important. We're also got a policy where we're going to attract and retain more doctors and health professionals in the regions. We're going to do this by having initiatives which offer financial support for education and training, but also in establishing practices. So the way we can help doctors and health professionals to establish practices in the regions is that we can look at giving them like just cutting the payroll tax for them or cutting the land tax for them initially, just while they get their practices established. The other thing that we need to do, we need to remove the bureaucrats from SA Health. We need health professionals running SA Health. So we've got non-medical people running SA Health, and that needs to be changed as well. But for Liberal and Labor to say that we haven't got policies, we've got so many policies, but our policies just aren't for the sake of policies. Our policies are great.
Yeah, 100%. And I did want to touch on this. This is quite a big one for me because, you know, I became politically involved and very much aware on a lot of things during COVID, which was the same for a lot of people. And COVID was a massive thing that I don't think a lot of Australians have reconciled yet. And there's still a lot of, you know, people being suppressed about how they're still dealing with a lot of trauma from that period. Now, Gail mentioned here before about about including preventative. Now, I interviewed Professor Ian Brighthope, and I've mentioned this plenty of times before, is that we keep focusing, and the major parties often keep focusing on fixing current health. Now, we're talking about building more hospitals, we're talking about getting more ambulances, we're getting more beds, more nurses, and all that. But what often doesn't get talked about is encouraging Australians to live better, live healthier, and look at preventative, having a lifestyle that's preventative to bad health, rather than throwing all this money after the fact into an unhealthy population. And we're seeing this change in America, and a lot of people don't like bringing in the whole, MAGA and America and what RFK Jr. is doing. They don't want to bring the American politics into Australia. But I think it's really important to talk about what Robert F. Kennedy is doing over there in regards to health, and I don't think we're anywhere near that. And I know this is a big issue for One Nation, because I think even before you joined and decided to become involved, One Nation with other parties got involved in an inquiry through COVID and had at least 3 inquiries. So I do know that One Nation is hot on the way that the pandemic was handled, and also the rollout of these medications that were injected in people's arms, and the information about the negative health impacts on that. Do you see One Nation continuing to move forward? I would have loved to have seen a Royal Commission. Do you see One Nation continue to move forward to push back on what happened during COVID, and also look at sort of preventative health messaging?
Yeah, absolutely. Malcolm Roberts has done a fantastic job at steering this. He has been a real instrument of change. He has exposed a lot of stuff. And I just want to add that those medicines that went into people's arms were experimental medicines. They were unproven, and that was an absolute disgrace, using Australian people as an experiment with that. But you're right. What JFK has done in America, I'm not saying we need to bring the American stuff here, but certainly preventative is way better than the cure. If we could get fat and sugar taxes happening, if we could get even some of the preservatives, so actually but addressing these issues with industry and getting the industry to come on board and say, okay, let's get rid of the trans fats and go back to saturated fat that they used to have. Like, let's go back to using butter and lard and those things that we know were healthier than these trans fats, which are chemicals, and they're cancer-causing agents because they're so processed. Definitely needs to be looked at. One Nation hasn't got any policies on this yet, but one of the ideas that I have, so this is me, not One Nation, is why can't we have naturopaths covered by Medicare? Because naturopaths, in my opinion, I'll go to a naturopath over a general practitioner, because I'll go to a doctor when I need stitches or a broken bone, but if it's for my health, I'll go to a naturopath. And I think people should have that choice, because, again, that is preventative. Same with integrative doctors. I think that is an option that needs to be on the table as well. Although I do believe that you can get a Medicare rebate. It's not very big, but you can get a partial rebate for integrative doctors. But we do need to be looking at our food. You look back, there was a YouTube video that showed the Australians on the beach like 30, 40 years ago. There were no fat people. Like, people were just eating sugar and butter and fruit and vegetables, and they'd have their meat and 3 veg, and they walked everywhere. So they'd ride their bikes to school, or they'd walk to school. They'd be out in the backyard playing cricket. We were so much more active, and I understand that we can't go back to those days. People say, oh, if only we could go back to the good old days. Well, you can't. All you can do is decide what you want your future to look like. So I do think that we need to look at that and look at where we want to go as a country, and what is the best, like the money that goes into our medical, like so many cancers are caused by sugar. Like it is incredible. And I just want to say One Nation is definitely going to be looking at that, particularly through Malcolm Roberts. And I'm not sure if the other parties are that interested. I think they've been bought off by the big pharmaceuticals and big sugar companies.
Yeah, well, lobbying and lobby money and influence is massive in lots of the industries. And
yeah, we'll ban lobbying. One Nation is going to ban lobbying. Lobbying should not be allowed.
Yeah, and I was going to say that because obviously, One Nation is obviously starting to grow now. Pauline's been at this for a long time, but there is a real risk, though. Then, as you grow as a party, I mean, is the feel within One Nation, and particularly here in South Australia, that even if you do grow, will you try and resist as vehemently as possible the lobbying influence? And we know that Labor and Liberal get a lot of big end of town financing as well. Both of them, get millions of dollars in donations and funding. Is that something that One Nation is going to try and push back on as they grow?
They don't even need to try. Pauline's never taken a dollar. Like she's never, ever taken money from a lobbyist. People keep bringing up Gina Rinehart. She has not taken any money from Gina Rinehart. She's accepted transport from her, where her and Barnaby have been flown places. But isn't that better than being done on the taxpayer's dime? And Gina has organised fundraisers for her. Pauline has not taken $1 from Gina, and she never would. That's the whole thing. We are a grassroots movement, and we get supported by mum and dads and pensioners. Our money comes from the $50 donation from the mum and dads out there. We don't need billionaires. We don't need lobbyists. We won't even let lobbyists through the door. We want to ban them.
Yeah, and I saw that interview with Chal from the Australian Lobby Group. I'm signed up to the Australian Lobby Group and had that interview with Pauline as well. And so she was quite frank, and the door's open to the challenges that they're pushing back on. So they have some really strong policy stances on what they're looking for in our government representatives. And it seems like Pauline's on board with quite a bit of that, which is good to see. Yeah, so Adrian, I'm just going to address this comment here. Digital ID is a big one. So is One Nation going to push back on digital ID and say no to full control?
We do not support digital ID in any way, shape or form. We'll be pushing back hard.
Yep. So internationalist influences and all that sort of stuff, and regardless of which lobby group it is, One Nation will push back on that, continue to push back on that.
All those three-letter people, they're gone. The WEF, the WHO, the United Nations, they are gone. We will be exiting all of them. Australia is sovereign. We will put Australia and Australians first. Foreign ownership, gone. Foreign students, look, we are going to be pushing back. We're going to be allowing Australia to breathe. We're going to catch up on everything. And I believe that Pauline's going to, this is federal, but she's going to be cutting the immigration numbers back to 150,000 a year until we catch up. And those people that she brings in, that we allow in, will be people who love this country, who want to assimilate and who want to contribute to this country. We will not be letting people in here that hate us and want to destroy our country.
Look, that's a fair call. We have a right to be a sovereign country, and this is again, I believe that people will go, oh, this is immigration. I mean, Pauline and others acknowledged that Australia was built on migrants, and the people that came here accepted that. My parents were migrants. I'm first generation Australian. You're a lot more generations Australia than me, but my wife's heritage goes way back to the early 1800s. But my parents came here. They acknowledged they loved this country. They worked very hard. All my brothers were brought up here and born here and brought up here. We've got children and grandchildren of our own. So no one's saying anything against migration. It is just the type of people that are coming into the country, and not all cultures do align. And that is, I guess, the message from One Nation.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing is just I was thinking about our veterans. Like when I was in America, we were on an American Airlines flight, and they acknowledged the veterans. Like they said, welcome aboard to the veterans. Thank you for your service. And even if they had an empty seat, like that, they'd upgrade them to that empty seat. And I was thinking, like, see, One Nation, we're having all of our candidate launches, as many as possible, in the RSLs, because we really, really support our veterans in the RSLs. And it's just really interesting, isn't it? Like, you have all these Aboriginal days like NAIDOC Week, you have Gay Pride Week, you have all these weeks for all these social issues, but we have one day for Anzac Day. I just think that is just so disappointing. Like, I would love to see an Anzac Week where we celebrate the wars, we celebrate the contribution. You've got to remember, like, the Aboriginal people fought alongside us. Like, it was all for one and one for all. We all were doing it together. We're all doing it under the one national flag. And the other thing that I'd really love to see is I'd love to see schools on a Monday at Assembly start singing the Australian anthem again. So I just think we need that national pride back. It's like it's almost like immigration is happening so fast and in such a huge number that we're actually losing our identity. And I don't want us to lose that. I want us to be able to honour our veterans, honour our Christian Judeo background, have the kids knowing about our Australian history and not being ashamed and thinking that we're on stolen ground. It's all this division. We've actually got a policy which is called, where is it? South Australia for South Australians. We've actually got a policy about unity, because it's just so important that we become cohesive and I'm very passionate about that, Mark.
Well, it's really important, like if we're not united as a state or a country, then it's easy to divide us, and that's unfortunately what seems to be happening from a lot of fronts. So any politician or party that doesn't seek to unify us all together as Australians and not continue to separate us by race is a huge thing. Now, I did want to go back to a comment I saw earlier, only because you have got a farming background and you're obviously generational farmer, and we were talking about health and food supply and all that. And Gail's got a comment here saying most farmers use glyphosate on their crops. The water is contaminated. The biosecurity bills are draconian. There's massive GMO, CRISPR technology in plants and restrictions on growing and producing food. Is that something that you're aware of or acknowledge, or wanting to see more research going into about the ill health effects of this stuff that's been sprayed on crops and we're using? Have you got any insights into that?
Yeah, look, that is a great question. So superglyphosate, that is Roundup, and Roundup is used on broadacre cropping. I don't know if your listeners are aware, but there is no underground water, there are no creeks, there is no runoff where most of the broadacre cropping occurs. So it doesn't actually leach into waterways. You certainly wouldn't want to be using it in the Adelaide Hills or where the catchments, anywhere near the catchments. As far as GMs go, so in 2020, I think it was, the state government lifted the ban on GMOs in every part of South Australia except for Kangaroo Island. There is still a moratorium on GMOs on Kangaroo Island. So our council, Barunga West Council, we put through a submission along with 10 other councils, including Mount Barker Council, and they all said no, they did not want GMO crops here. Anyway, the state government pushed ahead and did it anyhow. So, the people said no, the council said no, state government ignored us and they went ahead with it. To the best of my knowledge, the only GM crops that were available in 2020 was canola. So canola was the only crop that was a GM crop. I do believe they were working on barley. So yeah, it is very tricky because once you have a GM crop, you can't put that back in the bag because they pollinate, the bees carry it. Once you go GM, there's no going back from it. And I just think that it's really sad because what the Regional Development Association were trying to do was they were trying to promote South Australia as being unique, having clean green crops, no GMOs. Oh my goodness, Mark, we could have marketed that. We could have been like Tasmania and just had beautiful, clean food. But again, the state Labor government screwed us over. Sorry for being so crass, but they don't do what's best for this state. I'm so cross with the Labor government.
Yeah, and I did have a recent interview with Barry Green over in Western Australia, who's really following this in regards to Joe Salatin and that, and crops and growing and healthy growing and that in America, and looking to turn things around there because it's a massive thing over there as well. And look, I think that as much as we don't want to have too much influence of what's happening in America and Australia, there's still some lessons we can learn from what's happening internationally in regards to people, as new information comes available, that we look at addressing these things more effectively. So, no, good on you for answering that.
Did you want to
on
chat about the algal bloom? Like, Mark, you guys are down on the coast, and the algal bloom actually started down around Victor Harbour, because I remember I was down there campaigning. Was that around March last year? When
Yeah,
people
it was.
Harbour?
Absolutely. So it was a big thing, and I did actually share quite a lot of content in regards to that, because they weren't being open and transparent enough about it, and there was actually a lot of people that were also pointing at the desalination plants and stuff like that as well. But I just think overall the state government's really mishandled this ball. So absolutely.
I keep hearing from people like Peter was saying, there's nothing to see here, it's not toxic, it's not poisonous, go to the beach, it's fine. Yet I keep getting accounts from people who have had their dogs put down, they've swum their horses down at Yankalilla, and their horses have ended up with respiratory diseases. People just even playing cricket on the beach. Why is Labor, what's Labor hiding? Like, why are they minimising such a disastrous thing?
Yeah, it's huge. It's a big issue. And I heard those stories as well, where pets are getting sick, dogs walking and all that, and people reporting that. But there's not and they're throwing a lot of money on it. I mean, some people are saying it should have been like declared an emergency, and the federal government step in and all that as well. But a full and thorough investigation, and it just doesn't seem like that's happened as effectively as what it could, I guess.
So what are your thoughts? Do you think it's the desalination plants? I mean, that's been thrown around a lot. I don't know, but...
Yeah, look, I've seen obviously lots of stuff. I've shared stuff about it, and a lot of people are pointing at that from when it was fired up, from when they were fired up, and then when they were throttled back, it kind of eased up. So, but there obviously a lot of people saying there's a lot of contributing factors. This is the runoff off the land. There's a lot of chemicals. Obviously, a lot of that has a lot to do with it as well. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things. What I did push back on vehemently is this idea from the Greens, as usual, and others, is pointing to climate change hysteria, and pointing at, look, this is all happening because of climate change. Now, the experts obviously did come back and no one's actually fully hinted at that it's because of climate change. They've pointed at lots of other issues, whether it is a combination of the desal plant, whether it is a combination of the runoff off the land, of the chemicals, and the time of year, and the warmth of the water, and all these things. But of course, the Greens want to jump onto, oh my goodness, it's climate change. So I guess you obviously don't buy into that.
No, I don't. I believe we have four seasons. Like, climate change happens summer, autumn, winter, spring. That's our climate change.
Yeah, no, exactly right. I wanted to jump into sort of some numbers. Was there any other particular policies that you're kind of really hot on? You covered quite a bit that you're passionate about, but as we've seen through the site, there's so many. But I also did find the site that you have here for South Australia. So that's this one that will come up. So that should have, there's Carla's, that's on your farm.
Yeah, that's what I
Nice.
Adelaide Hills. So we're Adelaide Hills.
Nice. And that's sa1nation.org.au. So that's the site if people do want to jump on there. And I had the main page up earlier, which was all of your policies. The one policy party that you are. But I had all of those policies on there. But anyway, I just thought I'd chuck that in.
Super quick, just touch on like cost of living is huge, and we've got a great housing policy. So we're going to reduce the demand, obviously, by lowering immigration. We're going to increase the supply by banning foreign ownership. We're going to also increase the supply in regional areas where appropriate, like we'll add more houses where it doesn't impact agricultural operations. So, it's not a great fit to put a mini suburb right next to vineyards, or, where farmers are operational. That's not ideal. But we do believe there are spots regionally where we could increase housing supply. We're going to allow people the option to access their super in order to pay down their primary residence Also, new builds, like 45% of new builds are taxes, compliance. It's just incredible, like nearly half of the price of a new build. So just a few cost-saving things. We're going to be removing the GST off the cost of basic materials of new builds up to the value of $1 million. That will run for 5 years. We'll also be removing at a federal level, we'll be removing the GST from insurance policies. And at the state level, we'll be removing the stamp duty on insurance policies. Like you're paying 10% GST on your insurance, plus you're paying, is it 5% or 4% on stamp duty? So I know it's not huge, but it's something. We're just trying to ease that cost of living a little for people. And then federally, of course, we've got the great policies of income splitting, getting rid of the beer and wine tax, halving the fuel excise. We really are trying to help the everyday Australian by cutting down those costs. And then people go, oh, yes, well, how are you going to cover that, One Nation? You know, you one-trick pony. And it's easy. We get rid of government waste. We get rid of duplication. The councils, they're going to rein in the councils. So basically councils are going to get brought back to roads, rates, rubbish, parks, you know, public toilets, all those general things. And then we're going to handball everything back to the state government. By doing that, where they're going to lower your rates, because, you know, people keep saying we want lower council rates. So we're going to be implementing simple everyday policies which are immediately going to put money back into the South Australians' purse, and we're going to cover it by just cutting down on the waste, cutting down on the, you know, money going overseas, the NDIS waste, the Aboriginal industry waste, the renewables waste. Oh, we are going to fund this so easily. There's going to be money left over.
There's a lot there, isn't there? There's a hell of a lot. You know, one of the things that I you know, that I anticipate with having a party like One Nation, or I mean, there's obviously others in the state here that I mean, you've got the biggest momentum at the moment, but you know, you've got some others that I've been speaking to. But what I'm looking forward to, if it happens, is having members of One Nation or others that will challenge the status quo of the two main parties, which I see as two sides of the same coin. So what I'd love to see moving forward is much more transparency in the type of legislation that's been put forward. A pushback on rushed legislation is one of the things I'm looking forward to. And now that I'm politically involved, I'd love to see, you know, the candidates that will hold the major parties to account. So if a bill doesn't smell right and it undermines the freedoms and liberties of Australians, it should be broadcast to the Australians and say, this is a bill that's been presented, this is the concerns that we have. I just don't think there's enough transparency for the average, you know, someone that's politically interested. It's so muddy to try and find out, you know, what bill's been taken. You have to trawl through a whole heap of stuff. And when I was looking to run with Australian Federation Party, they had this concept where they would be fully transparent and have public hall meetings regularly. The candidate would come out and talk about what was going on. They'd have an app which would show the kind of bills that they're voting on and put it out there to the people to say, look, you know, which way do we think we should go here and that. So I really feel that we need a lot more transparency in government for people, like citizen initiated referendum and all these sorts of things. Where's your thoughts on that? Because I do know One Nation has acknowledged that they do agree with CIRs and other types of things like that, where it should be more about the people having control over government rather than the government having control over people. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, look, I couldn't agree with you more, Mark. That is going to be one of the prime areas we focus on, is that transparency. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing an audit into everything. We're going to dig, we're going to expose, and we're going to let the people know what is going on. You know, if it comes to having to shame the politicians into doing the right thing, well, we will. Ridicule can be a very good tool. They don't want to be embarrassed. And if we expose stuff, and it's like, you know, when you bring things into the light, all is exposed. I mean, that's a parable, isn't it? So we will be doing that. Another thing that we want to do is we want to make politicians' diaries publicly available. So you can publicly see who they're meeting with, what they're doing. So if they're meeting with a lobbyist, it's on the public record. If they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing, it's on the public record. We want transparency. They are taking taxpayer money. They're getting paid over $200,000 a year on the taxpayer. The taxpayer should know what they're up to. So I think that that is a really good idea as well. So also, one thing that we plan on doing is we're only going to attend Parliament on sitting days. The rest of the time, we are going to be out in the regions, out with the people going, hey, this is what we're doing. What do you think? Is there anything we should be doing differently? We're going to constantly be going backward and forward, and people are going to have a real voice into what we bring into the Parliament. We're not just going to get elected and sit there and be pigs in a trough. We're actually going to be out there with the people, bringing back the people's ideas.
Yeah, well, people are looking for change, and it sounds like that you're all geared up for it. I mean, as a candidate of the Legislative Council, and I'm seeing a lot of posts coming through from the other candidates, and there's 47 of them in the lower house seats for the state. So you've got a full book there. But I just wanted to segue then really quickly into the numbers, because this is quite important. I mean, it's one thing saying you've got 47 candidates. You may end up having running with 5 in the Legislative Council, obviously headed with Corey, and then, you know, Carlos, yourself, and then possibly another 2. But having a quick look, obviously, and a lot's changed, you know, across the board since 2022. But this is kind of how it looked in 22, and obviously a One Nation candidate was elected. Now, obviously, that ended up differently, obviously, from there, as most South Australians know. So that person no longer represents One Nation, but ultimately one person was elected. It was ultimately about 40,000 votes, primary votes, but then with preferences, as the preferences flowed, that person got elected. Now, things have changed. Do you see yourself, now that there's a different economic environment, there's a different political environment, do you see that much more achievable of getting more than the 1 in the Legislative Council, the way that things are situated now? 3 years on, a lot of water's under the bridge, and people, you know, the Libs are on the nose. I've got a feeling maybe Labor's a little bit on the nose with people. How much do you think it's going to have an impact coming into this? Looking at the numbers from 2022, are you confident that you're going to definitely turn that around?
Absolutely, Mark. I think you've nailed it. So we're not just getting Liberals coming across, we're getting Greens, we're getting Labor people, we're getting people from right across the board. So they are seeing the momentum and they're jumping on board because they actually want change. They are so sick of the legacy uni party. They want this broken up. They want to see One Nation succeed, because if One Nation succeeds, then they will succeed. Now, we haven't seen any South Australian numbers yet, but I'm very, very optimistic that they are going to be surprising to Labor and Liberal, and we're also polling quite a bit higher in the regions as well. So, yes, 27%. Yeah, I really want to see the state numbers. I haven't seen any state numbers yet. Have you seen any state numbers yet?
No, there is some reporting of around 12. Some people are saying 12.5%, but I'm not sure how accurate that is. And I'd like to think it's actually a bit higher than that. I do honestly think that you guys are probably polling better than Greens, which I hope anyway. You know, people are reckoning that they'll pick up 1 or 2 seats. I'm kind of hoping not, but anyway. We'll see how it goes. But look, you know, some commentators are saying between 12 and 15% in the state. But look, you know, it's early days yet, and I think there's momentum growing, and you guys are actually talking into a lot of topics. Clearly, you've just pointed out to that shadow Liberal minister that was saying that you're a one policy party. Clearly, you've outlined in our discussion that you're absolutely not a one policy party. But I wanted to quickly just also run through to the polls from 2022, or the way the preferences went, because preferences is a real big one. People tend to forget about this a lot. But Anthony Green, I follow him quite a bit. He does some great stuff. I'm just going to share a little bit from his page where he's done a dissection of the 2022 election. So Anthony Green's got in here: overall One Nation preference flowed 46% to Labor and 53.9% to Liberal. Preferences were directed to Labor in 4 seats and flowed 50% to Labor as against 48 in seats with Liberal preference recommendations. So Anthony Green's talking about how effective how to vote cards are. This is what this kind of is here. Of the 9 seats where preferences to Labor were about 50%, 3 were in seats with Labor recommendations and 3 in seats with Liberal recommendations, but the donkey vote favouring Labor. Clearly, voters did not pay much attention to how to vote recommendations, and clearly you guys are going to be doing how to vote recommendations, nor did there appear to be strong anti-Labor feeling amongst One Nation voters, but this was back in 2022. But this compares to the 2025 federal election when One Nation preferences were 71% to Liberal in South Australia. So from 2022 to 2025, clearly there was some change in the type of voters and where their preferences were going. Now, I've talked a lot about preferences and I believe they're important. What is you've got obviously the how to vote cards. People always ask, you know, what are you going to put as your how to votes? And I think this is a party decision. This is something that you may not be able to answer. But my view and thoughts on this preferences is that if you're going to vote for a party like One Nation or even Family First or United Voice or Fair Go, your values align more on the centre-right conservative, I believe, right, if you're looking at these. So for me, it doesn't make sense for someone that would vote Family First and then put Labor second, because the values in my mind don't align. And the same with, say, One Nation voter. Why would you, after all these years now, look at putting your number one vote behind One Nation and then throw it to Labor? Do South Australians just need to do a lot better to get the right candidates representing them with preferences?
I just have a clarifying question with those numbers. Were those numbers the number 2 vote on the card going to Labor, or was that just, say, they put One Nation number 1, then they put down an independent, and then the independent went to Labor? Like, was that a number 2 preference, or was that just where they landed going down?
Yeah, I don't think it broke it down to that extent, but I think it ended up going downstream. And we know the parties that are going to throw their votes towards Labor is usually going to be Greens, Animal Justice Party, and so forth. But so the preference flowed.
Could be quite subjective in that respect, because I do know for a fact that both Liberal and Labor will support independents, because they know that when somebody doesn't want to vote for Labor, they may vote for an independent, and then the independent gives them those votes. So there are independents out there who are supported by either Liberal or Labor in order to top up their votes. So it's really hard sometimes when you are out there thinking, well, I'm going to put Liberal and Labor last, or the major parties last, but then they put down another minor party, like the minor parties like Family First and Chomp as a Patriot. They all gave their preferences to Labor. I don't know if people voting for them realised that they were going to do that. And I think your listeners need to realise that it is a legal obligation for us to produce a how to vote card. We don't have a choice. It is a legally required obligation for parties to produce that. I really like what Rebecca Sharkey did in hers at the federal election, where she just said, put me number 1 and you make your mind up on the rest. If I was doing a how to vote card, I would do the same. I'd just say, please, I need your number 1 vote, because without the number 1 vote, it doesn't help. But you need to remember that the votes, they all siphon down into either red or blue. So all the marbles come down and they end up in a blue or a red jar. And that is what I hate about our system. And that is something One Nation is seriously going to look at federally if they can get control, is looking at our preferential system, because it wasn't part of the Westminster system. It's not part of our constitution to have this preferential system. This preferential system is set there by the legacy parties to ensure that either one of them are in charge at the end. And I just really think that it stinks that no matter who I put, whether I do One Nation, all these conservative parties, eventually it is going to end up, unless they win, is going to end up being Liberal and Labor. And gee, that just takes the air out of my balloon. It really does.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I guess if people are passionate enough about One Nation and wanting to put one to number, well, let's talk purely the Legislative Council, which is what you're running in. If someone puts a number one on above the line, and you are running 5 candidates, those votes are going to continue to trickle down. So, that's going to go to Corey, it's going to go to Carlos, it's going to go to you, and then it's going to continue to run down. But if people have only got sort of one candidate that they're putting up, if they got 150,000 votes, there's 50,000 votes that end up being exhausted if they don't actually preference another person. But that wouldn't be an issue for you, because I guess the key message for you in the Legislative Council is putting number one against One Nation, and the vote will just continue to trickle down to every person that you have in there. This is the
1 year. Like with these numbers, like this is the year to put us number one. If you're a Liberal or a Labor voter, this is the 1 year. If you actually want to break up the uni party, this is the year to put us number one. I just really, please put us number one in this election. So important.
Yeah, and there was something, I joined a podcast last night that talked about One Nation in particular, how it's running in the state and that. And we talked about people in South Australia, or just in general across the country, that have lost so much interest in politics that actually aren't, that they're enrolled to vote, but are just not voting at all. And there was quite substantial numbers here in South Australia when I did a bit of an analysis on it. And then there's obviously a lot of donkey votes. So that totaled up to about 160,000 South Australians. Now that's a lot of votes just gone to waste, essentially. But what would you say? And I've got my views. I've talked to people, and I say to them, I understand why you've lost interest in government. I understand why you think the system can't be fixed. But my message is, you've got people like yourself that are putting your head above the parapet to try and make a difference, to chip away. If you don't vote, nothing will ever change. If you turn up and you put a number one, just turn up for half an hour, whatever, it's not going to take long, and you put a number one on the Legislative Council, and that gets, potentially gets 2 or 3 people in One Nation elected in there, and then there could be potential for change. What would you say to those South Australians, that maybe the 100,000, that 160,000 South Australians that are still thinking, nah, stuff it, government's not going to change? What's your message to them?
You're contributing to the problem. You really are, because for every donkey vote that could have gone to One Nation or to a Conservative party, you're supporting Labor, Greens. Like, you really are. You're part of the problem. It does have an impact. Please don't do a donkey vote. Number every box.
Yeah, no, great message, and I've stated it quite clearly about how I feel about that. I think we should all make we get it. I get the arguments of why we stuff the system and why should we even bother. But you've actually got some decent South Australians that are putting their head above the parapet every day. Mums and dads, farmers, as yourself, putting your head above the. And I mean, you're doing this obviously not because of any notoriety or whatever. You just see there's something fundamentally wrong with this country, and you're wanting to make a difference. Is the way I read you, and I have read you for a couple of years now that I've talked to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to touch on my faith as well. So I'm a very strong Christian woman, and I don't push it on anyone, but I do believe that I have the right, the freedom of speech, the freedom to gather, and the freedom of religion. And I do believe that Christian schools deserve to be able to preach the Bible in their schools, just the same as any other religion has the right to preach their religion in their schools. And I will be fighting for people's rights. I do not believe in late-term abortions. I do not believe in euthanasia. I don't believe that we should be allowing prostitution in this country. I don't believe that we should be teaching what they teach in schools. Like, there's only 2 genders. There's male and female. And, you can't identify as a boy and then use those toilets. Like, it's just wrong. It's just wrong on every level. And whether you agree with me or not, that's where I stand. And I believe that is the beauty of One Nation, is we don't need a party like Family First, because we're embracing Christian values. We are there. We're a home for the conservatives. We're a home for the farmers. We're a home for the shooters and the fishers. We are a home for every single South Australian. Every single South Australian can vote for One Nation and have their livelihoods and their values protected.
Yeah. Here, and this is the other thing. I'm glad you talked into that, but about this whole idea of Labor and even Liberal now to a certain extent, basically saying, well, you even if you had a Conservative Labor member, they still have to toe the party line. From what I understand is that if you've got a conscience vote or you want to go a certain way, you're allowed to do that. With the other major parties,
Yes.
it's in their constitution that they have to toe the party line, and I have an issue with that. And I believe that if you're going to have a party, you need to allow your members who represent a constituency to vote along the lines that their members chose that person for. So I totally agree with that. So those people that, if you do get elected and others like yourself get elected, if the Greens put a bill in, which they continue to do, to say that they want to change faith-based teaching in faith-based schools and change those hiring practices, that'll be a big no from you, from the sound of it.
Oh, absolutely, and probably most of the people in One Nation. Pauline is incredibly supportive. She does not micromanage. She allows us to have autonomy in our roles. The other person that was in before she left, even she would say how amazing Pauline was and how Pauline does not micromanage, and we are allowed to speak for our own values and we're allowed to speak for our communities. So yeah. Pauline's fabulous.
Yeah. Yep. So we've covered quite a bit of ground. It's like just over an hour already. And I mean, the viewers on tonight's show are used to 2.5 hour sessions with Bruce, because he presents a lot of stuff in that time. And I'm not going to keep you that long because it's quite exhausting. I know when we were speaking, you'd had a lot of missed calls. You got a lot of juggling going on at the moment. And I appreciate the time you've put there. But seeing you mentioned the faith, back in 1901, when the states all came together, Australians were about 98% Christian. We're about 44% identifying as Christians now. We're seeing a lot of lobby groups on for different faith-based groups. How strongly will you push back for those traditional Christian values, regardless of the polarization of other religious groups that are now also fundamentally part of our country?
I will be pushing back with everything I've got, because it is my fundamental belief and it's my values, and I don't back down from that. And I do believe that if you can be true and you can stand firm, God will honour that.
Hear, hear. Amen. Well, thank you, Rebecca Hewett. I'm pretty sure there's some people. I think that I've had a lot of comments in the chat. I haven't brought all of them up, but I do appreciate all the comments that have come through. People have enjoyed the conversation. They've enjoyed hearing from you, and there might be an opportunity for maybe to come on again if there's any hot topics. And I'm pretty sure I'd love the opportunity, if there's something that you want to get off your chest and you want to talk about that the state government or other people aren't doing right, they come on and share that with the audience. You've definitely a lot of people have appreciated your contribution on the chat tonight. So wishing you all the best with the rest of your campaign and the rest of your team as well. And I'm pretty sure we'll hear more from Corey and Carlos and the rest of the One Nation team as well. So God bless you, God bless Australia, and God bless all of you out there listening as well, and hope you have a great rest of your night.
Thank you so much, Mark, for having me on, and I'd love to chat again. And just want to remind your viewers, if any of this resonates with you, get in touch with your local candidates. We really need your help. This is a grassroots movement. So the more help we can get, chat with your neighbours, chat at church, chat at your sport club. Let's just really finish this off strong. Yeah, no, good on you. Good message. All right, and that's it then, guys. Good on you. Thanks for all your comments, and have a great night. We'll see you again soon. Okay, take care. Bye.